Well, Coach, first of all, congratulations on the job. You inherit a team that played in the national championship game last year. I would say if this is a case study for the world we live in college football, this would be it, right? This team played for a national championship last year, new coach, tons of new players, probably doesn't look the same as they looked, a few months ago, right?
Yeah, I'd say the logo played in the national championship, not the team.
Yeah.
The university played in the national championship, but this team, we only have 38 scholarship players from last year's team on our roster, and we have one starter from last year's team and no coach from last year's team. So it is a completely different team. We just happen to wear the same jerseys.
So the 38 players that you have that were on this team last year, I mean, what's the vibe with them? What did you feel about the guys that decided to stay?
Yeah, I think it's still a work in progress. We're still working through a lot of things right now. We're still trying to figure out our culture, and they were very much of a player-run program. They were run by a lot of the players that aren't there anymore, and they had to really grasp. Some of these guys have had 4 head coaches. Some of these guys that were the 2 of the guys that we brought here today to media day are wind-up guys that were recruited by Chris Peterson. So it's definitely a unique environment, and we have to get those guys on board with the way we like to do things, and they're becoming really a part of one team, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Great turnaround at Arizona, a place that's not the easiest place to do what you did. 3 years, great turnaround. What from that experience can you apply to where you're at now, and what needs to be done at Washington?
Yeah, when we were at Arizona, we really felt like it was critical that we got a quarterback. That's number one, that we had to make sure that. So in our second year, we brought in Jaden DeLaura. In our third year, we had Jaden and Noah Fafita for both of those years. And we managed to have really good success on offense from those guys. We established a culture where we were going to act like pros in everything we did, and we were going to talk about professional football every single day. We weren't going to shy away from it. We were going to talk about our NFL experience. We're going to bring in speakers that talk about the league and how you act and how you practice and how you behave. And we're going to use that exact same model at Washington. The other thing we did is we really lived through high school recruiting. We brought in some on the portal, maybe 6 or 8 guys a year. But we would sign a class of 25 or 28 players. And we're going to keep that same model because I really do believe it's a lot easier to train than retrain. And if we could bring in guys at 18 and teach them how to play and teach them, we were the youngest team in college football in 2022. In 2023, we went 10-3 and wound up being in a situation where with that team, we had about 17 returning starters going into the 24 season at Arizona. So we're going to build through the draft, as I like to say, and then we're going to use free agency when needed.
Well, you talked about finding a quarterback. You have Will Rogers, who came from Mississippi State, as a guy who has a lot of game experience, played in a lot of big games in big venues. What does he bring to the table for you and for your offense?
Yeah, his football acumen is excellent. He's a high school coach's son. He played for Leach for 3 years, and then this past year at Mississippi State, he played for a different coordinator that was a little bit more pro style. So, Will now going into his third coordinator or third offensive coach, he's now really become well-versed in a lot of different systems. And I think with that is really going to help him be able to execute what we're asking for, which is kind of a mix of under center and gun and a mix of play action and drop back game and being able to check at the line of scrimmage and have a lot of control up there as a quarterback. So Will brings that age of maturity, but also that football maturity. And he's leading a room where Damon Williams is an elite player, true freshman that came early in January that was committed to us at Arizona. And he's really teaching him some of the different aspects of college football.
That's cool. You talked about the players. Your coaching staff, how many guys came with you from Arizona, or where did you pull some of your other guys from?
Yeah, we brought 21 with us from Arizona. So we brought our entire offensive staff, and we brought 2 of our 5 defensive coaches. special teams coordinator, head strength coach, nutritionist, player programs, recruiting, you name it, GAs. So we brought as many as we could. And then we hired 3 defensive coaches. We hired 2 from New England and 1 from Alabama. So we hired Steve Belichick to be our defensive coordinator, and hired Vinny Sinceri to coach our safeties. Both of those guys were at the Pats, played in Alabama, as you know. And then we hired Robert Bala, who is a linebacker coach for Coach Saban, to be our linebacker coach. And that's our staff. So we've had the privilege of working together for a while. Offensively, we've worked together for 4 straight years. We haven't lost a position coach. So it's been the same 5 plus myself in every offensive room for 4 years. So that's enabled us to have a little bit quicker transition than if we had to teach our scheme to others.
Yeah. So you mentioned Belichick. I know you also have Pete Carroll's son on the offensive side as your coordinator, and now you're in Seattle, and Pete Sr., I mean, he's around there, right? How cool is that to have him around your staff, your players, your program?
Oh, it's great. Coach Carroll, I think, was probably at 5, 6, 7 practices this spring already. You know, he'll bebop around. He was there at my press conference when I took the job, and you know, he's living his great life. He's living his life right now, and mixing in being a grandpa. So the good part is that BC's got 3 kids that are around a lot, so that brings Pete around. Coach Belichick has been around twice already. He'll be back for training camp. He'll spend about a week with us at training camp. And he's grinding it pretty good as well. And then we also have Jack Del Rio's son on our staff.
Oh, wow.
So Jack's been around for a couple weeks now. And so it's been great to have legendary coaches. Obviously, Pete and Bill are, you know, members of the Mount Rushmore coaching. So to have them as sounding boards, to have them watch our practice and to kind of give me some feedback is just invaluable.
Yeah. Talk about, just for you personally, some of the other, because I know you have an interesting career. You've been a lot of places. You've had a lot of guys you've worked for and with. Who have been some of the main guys that you have pulled from or been mentored by?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all starts with Steve Spurrier. Coach Spurrier was the first guy that ever gave me a shot. First guy, I went to Florida because of him and only him. I wanted to learn how to coach. I wanted to be around who I thought was the best there was at that time. And it all starts there. You know, he always likes to say you have fun competing, but you compete every day. And he's as competitive as anybody I know. And being around him and learning how to call offensive plays and coach a quarterback was certainly something that I'll never forget. And then being with Mike Shanahan, you know, I've worked for Sean, I've worked McVay, I've worked with Jeremy Bates, I've worked with a bunch of guys that have worked for Mike, but working for Mike directly as his wide receiver coach at the Broncos just is an invaluable experience to learn how to set up an offensive system and how to make sure that you're attacking defenses the right way. So, you know, I've had some privileges of being with the best of the best, obviously working for Coach Belichick, working for Sean McVay, working for Jim Harbaugh. Those guys are all just elite as well. So it's just been a privilege, and I hope I can just keep it going.
Yeah. You talked about rebuilding, and, you know, skilled people are great, but you got to be good up front, right? And so you're this was the Joe Moore Award winning offensive line a year ago, but none of them are there, right? So you're starting over and have to rebuild. How do you go about that? What's the best way to build there?
Yeah, well, you know, that's one of those that, you know, the portal has to be your friend when you're dealing with big guys, because if you only build through high school recruiting, they're not going to be big enough fast enough. So we had to dip into the portal and bring a different group of guys. We brought in a lineman from Ohio State. We brought a lineman from Maryland. We brought in a lineman from Portland State. We brought in a couple linemen. Well, we have a couple linemen that were injured with ACL injuries that should be back for training camp. So I think we have a good group. You know, we do. We just have to see if we can get 5 guys to play well together. Yeah. Because none of them have ever played at Washington. That'll probably be starting for us.
What advantage is it for you? You know, there's a lot of talk about these 4 new teams coming into the league. You're a new coach at one of those 4 new teams, but you have competed against those other 3. I mean, what kind of advantage is that for you in your early prep?
Yeah, I think that as we're going against those teams, and I think knowing UCLA, even though it's a new coaching staff, we have played them the last 3 years. Playing USC the last 3 years, we've played Oregon 2 of the last 3 years. There's certainly some value of having some recognition. We do play all 3 of those teams at the end of the year. We play them all in November, maybe October, November, end of October, November. So. We certainly will have a little bit of more knowledge there. We play Washington State, who we've also played the last 3 years when I was at Arizona, so that's good. And then the other opponents are all new. Now, I've played them when I was coaching at Michigan, when I was coaching at Minnesota, but those were, years ago now. A lot of them have changed who's running the show and what they're doing, but certainly recognize and experience or excited about the experience of playing against James Franklin or playing against Kirk Ferentz and some of the icons of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think the Penn State game's already been announced as the whiteout game that you guys will be there, so that's quite an experience. It's
yes,
pretty
it
cool.
is.
Pretty
I've
cool.
been a part of that one before.
Yeah. Good deal.